Two.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us for today's Worksite Wellness Lunch and Learn. I'm Carol Battle, and I manage our Worksite Wellness program. Please note that we offer closed captioning for this event. For captioning in English, just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Or if you'd like captioning in Spanish, click on the link in the chat to use that option. You may have heard someone say that they're tracking their macros before. This morning, we're going to learn exactly what macronutrients are and how to balance them. Our presentation today will shed some light on how we can create macronutrient-balanced meals and why that's important to our overall health. Following the presentation, our speaker, Godin, will do a live cooking demo, so be sure to stay through the end of the webinar. Katie's a registered dietitian who's been practicing for over 16 years. She focuses on helping individuals improve their knowledge and relationship with food and meet their personal health goals. Lifestyle Medical Centers is an in-network nutrition counseling service. For those enrolled in the state health plan, virtual and in-person visits are covered at 100% for in-network providers. We have dietitians across the state, and to find one near you, log in to your state health plan portal, which is listed on the cover slide. As a reminder, everyone who's registered for this event will receive a recording of today's presentation as well as the recipe and any handouts. To find past lunch and learn recordings or see what's coming up next, visit our website at oshr.nc.gov/wellness-webinars. During the presentation, you can submit questions through the Q&A, and members of our NC Flex team will help answer them. Additionally, Katie has saved a few minutes at the end of the presentation to conquer any questions that we're unable to get to. Now, let's welcome Katie and Lunch and Learn.
Thank you, Carol. Hey, everybody. Happy to be here. Some pretty weather out there today, which is always helpful and nice this time of year. Today, we are going to talk about the importance of macronutrient balance. I know this is something that we hear a lot. I think that term, specifically macro balance, really is floating around all over the place all the time, and how we should be balancing these, but what does that really mean and why should we be doing that? And so that's what we're going to kind of dive into a little bit further today. As Carol mentioned, I've been a dietitian for a while now. I think this is absolutely the most favorite thing that I've done in my career, though, is to be able to sit here and do these lunch and learns with you guys, teaching on lots of fun health and wellness topics. I just feel really blessed to be able to do that. And so thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this for the past couple of years. I've been at Lifestyle for about 6 years now. And the other side of it is just doing that one-on-one nutrition counseling, which I think is another wonderful way to connect to people. You know, the services that we provide that are offered, you know, are just lots of different opportunities for you to learn about just what health and wellness and good, healthy lifestyle habits looks for you. So I love that about our program, is how individualized it is. So if it's something you've been thinking about, you've been doing these lunch and learns for a while, and you really want to just kind of take that next step, we would love to have you. And I would love to meet you virtually or in person. I love getting to meet people in person though. All right, well, let's dive right in. What are macronutrients? You know, I think that that's something that is just, like I said, this is a term that floats around a lot, and we might not even really know what that is, right? And so I wanted to kind of explain that first. So macronutrients are essential nutrients for providing energy while supporting various physiological functions in the body. That's kind of that very, you know, scientific kind of realistic term there that kind of explains it in a nutshell. But what are these three main macronutrients that we're talking about? So carbohydrates, protein, and fat. All right. And so you can see over to the side a pretty basic model here, but I like the simplicity of it. And we'll get into things a little bit more detail in a second. But as you can see, there are definitely overlapping sections of these macronutrients, meaning that some carbohydrate foods are also protein foods, and some fat foods are also protein foods. And there's kind of this little interconnection, if you will, of these food items. And so, for example, just to explain one little section there. So with the carbs, you can see that there's beans. These are a protein source, but we also like for people to know that they also do have carbohydrates. So they provide kind of a different type of energy and macronutrient because they're a combination food. So anyway, we'll get more into that. Let's kind of get into the first macronutrient that we're going to talk about, which is carbohydrates. So you guys have heard them as carbs, maybe sugars. Maybe we hear, we shouldn't be eating a lot of these guys, right? Well, I am always that person that's going to come back and say, no, we really need to be eating them, and we need to be eating them every day in a balanced way. And there's certain, dietary modifications that take the carbs maybe down a little bit in percentage. And that's something that, we do talk to people about, is that there's flexibility in the way that you eat these. I'm going to throw out some pretty standard recommendations for percentages, but that doesn't mean that that's what it's going to look like for you. And we'll get into that a little bit further down the road here. Let me just kind of start though by talking about what carbohydrates do for us. So basically they're our primary fuel source. They're not our only fuel source, but they are one of those primary fuel sources within our diet. And we need them for energy for our muscles, for our central nervous system during specifically exercise and movement. And it's just really essential that we kind of have these floating around in our day in some way. And these basic recommendations that I'm going to give you guys, like I said, these are just kind of standard Western diet recommendations. So there's different ways of putting this all together, but I'll explain that in a minute. But typically between 45 to 65% of your total calories. It really just kind of depends on the individual. So there are two different types though, and I've kind of given you an example here over to the right of some of these foods that exist in these different types. But simple carbs, these are going to be more of your sugary foods. They're going to be more of those refined grains. And yes, they're going to definitely be more of your processed foods. So, things like cookies and you see their chips and maybe white bread or white rice pasta, those types of things. It does not mean, and I've talked about this, I don't really love to put labels on foods. It does not mean you can't have them. I'm just telling you that that's what they're called. And that's why. So complex carbs kind of have a little bit more to them. And so I think it's really kind of easy to kind of see how with that term complex, there's more going on in the picture. There's usually more fiber. Sometimes there's some protein, a little bit. Sometimes there's, just a little bit more nutrients involved. And I guess when you look at the two pictures, maybe you can kind of gather that. But those complex carbs, things like whole grains, certain vegetables that are more of those starchy vegetables, and they typically just provide more sustained energy. And the reason behind that being the case is because they just have more fiber. And we just got through talking about fiber last month. And so as you maybe remember, fiber is something that helps to kind of keep you full a little bit longer. It slows down the digestion of blood sugars. All of that kind of is an example of how it's more sustainable energy in your body. So it's important to kind of understand the difference between those two. So I thought I would kind of talk through that. Okay. So let's get into that next macronutrient, which is protein. You probably know little bits about why we need protein, but basically it's essential for building and repairing tissue and muscle mass. They also, though, really do have a big role in hormone development, skin, blood, enzymes, and these processes that are going on throughout the body. So it's a pretty big deal. We just need to understand that, again, a lot of this is about balance. So I'm not going to sit here at the end of this presentation and say I prefer one macronutrient over the other. But it's important to understand what they're doing for us. Now, protein is broken down into what we call amino acids. I don't know if you guys have heard that term before, but they're really these building blocks of that protein structure. Okay. And so the body naturally makes 11 of these. And so that's something that, our body just does. It kind of produces them, it makes them, but 9 of these are provided only by food. And that's why they're termed essential amino acids. And I don't know if you guys have heard that term before, but these really need to be, focused on. I feel like if you are someone who eats meat and dairy and eats kind of just a very basic diet that includes all types of protein, you're probably just fine. We usually are over consuming protein in the standard Western diet. So I really don't think anyone's at risk there from being protein malnourished. However, if you're someone who is a vegetarian or is a vegan, this is something that you do, need to be a little bit aware of and a little bit strategic on. And so there are ways for vegetarians, of course, to get complete sources of protein in their diet. I give some examples there of what these complete proteins are. So eggs and dairy and meat and seafood and soy, which is a plant-based form of protein. Some others that aren't on that list, though, to mention, though, for plant-based is hemp and quinoa, and then buckwheat. These are 3 also complete grains and nutrients that you can add to your diet if you are vegetarian or vegan. Also, you can kind of combine different forms of protein to make them complete. Maybe you guys have heard this before, but eating something like beans and rice together is kind of taking a bean and a grain. So combining these makes them a complete protein. And then also nuts and whole grains. So if you were to have a piece of peanut butter on, piece of toast with peanut butter on it, that would be an example. And I know I'm getting into a little bit of detail here, but it's only to just explain that these are things that you would learn, though. I feel like a lot of times when you think about seeing a dietitian, we think we're going to just, we got to go because we got to lose weight, right? And that isn't all that it is. Maybe that's part of it, but a lot of it is being educated on stuff like this. So I think that's kind of interesting. But yes, it's important that we're getting good variety of protein throughout the day. And I think that we can have some meals that have more than others, but just those basic recommendations that we're kind of educating people on is somewhere between 10 to 35% of calories. I'm not giving you guys grams because that really is individualized. That would be something that we would do and figure out for you in a session. Right. So, but it's good for you to know that just this specific percentage of calories we kind of determine for you would be a nice way of getting, or nice way of ensuring you're getting enough protein. All right. Okay, moving on to that third and final macronutrient, fat. Fat is one of my favorite things to talk about with people when I'm in a session with them, because I think that it's something that is completely underappreciated. I think that we are nervous of fat, fearful of fat, is kind of what I like to say, because maybe we've been taught that for a really long time. Fat is bad. We shouldn't be eating fat. Fat brings more calories to the table. Anyway, fat is very, very important. And there's a little laundry list of reasons why we should be eating fat. Long-term energy storage is one of them, just meaning that Fat is that macronutrient that really gives you the most sustainable energy. It keeps you full the longest of any macronutrient. It helps protect our organs. So we need fat just for that reason alone. It keeps our body temperature stable. It's also needed to make hormones, and it's really important for the absorption of our fat soluble vitamins, which I've kind of listed out there, A, D, E, and K. Certain fats, just kind of like I mentioned about proteins, certain fats are also termed essential because we need them from food. And these are called omega-3 fats. Not sure if you guys heard that term. Maybe you have, maybe you've heard of the supplement, right? So taking an omega-3 fatty acid supplement is kind of something that we think about, but we should be trying to get those fats from food. We recommend anywhere from 20 to 35% of your total calories to come from fat. And so different types of fat, you're going to see saturated fat, which you guys have probably heard of this before, but a lot of times we term this as the unhealthy fat, right? So we shouldn't be eating a lot of saturated fat. And that is true. I do like to educate people on the fact that if we're looking at ratios, I would prefer for you to understand and learn about how important unsaturated fat is for us. That doesn't mean that if you have saturated fat in your day that it's bad. It just means let's try to work on having lots of these unsaturated fats floating around throughout our day. And these fats are these saturated fats are going to come from animal products solely. And that's really, well, I shouldn't say that because coconut oil is high in saturated fat, but mostly animal fats. And you're going to get that from your oils and dairy products, butter, those, and a lot of processed foods that you might find, just packaged processed. Sweets is a big, area that you might see a lot of saturated fats added to that. And then your unsaturated and your polyunsaturated fats are going to be from things like your nuts and your seeds, avocado, your healthy oils, and those omega-3 fats, which we need from food, such as salmon and flax seeds and walnuts are just a few examples. Okay. So again, I think it's important to understand what the 3 macronutrients are, why we need them, but we also need to know, how do we put all this together, right? Like, I've got all this information. Well, how do I eat? So let's talk about that. Let's get into first the benefits though. So, we really do, in my opinion, need to be balancing these out. Now, the ways in which we balance them might look a little different for some, but in general, at your meals, I love it when people can kind of have a little bit of each. Benefits include blood sugar control. So protein, fiber, and fat specifically are really helpful for stabilizing your blood sugars. And this could be if you have diabetes or if you don't have diabetes. So I really like if everybody is eating to the point where they're keeping their blood sugar stable. Blood sugar stability helps keep our mood stable. It helps keep us full longer. It helps give us more sustained energy. There's lots of benefits of that. Like I said, whether you have diabetes or you don't, but it's really important if you do have any type of diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance. These are all reasons why we should be focusing on understanding this a little bit more. As I mentioned, improved satiety or fullness. That's what that term means. Specifically protein, fiber, and fat. These 3 macronutrients. And fiber, guys, comes from carbohydrates. So I kind of talked through that last time just to make sure we're remembering that. Enhanced nutrient absorption. As I mentioned, fat is really important. Having fat in our diet is really important because it aids with that absorption of those fat soluble vitamins. Hormone balance, as I mentioned, protein and fat do help with that. So keeping those in the mix. And then digestive health, specifically from whole foods, fruits and vegetables, and then fiber sources just in general. And then because of all of those really good benefits, that's why we're noticing when we have macronutrient balance and just overall balance of good, healthy foods in our diet. We're finding we have reduced risk of chronic disease as a result. Okay, so let's talk about the plate method approach. This is one of my favorite things for people to, understand, because if we look at it here, it's a really simple visual to remember. It's a great way of showing you macronutrient balance just on your plate by having some of that protein, specifically a quarter plate protein, a quarter plate coming from some type of whole grain or some type of starch, could be a starchy vegetable. And then half of our plate focused on those non-starchy vegetables. And that's where we're going to get those other really important things called micronutrients. Those are your vitamins, your minerals. Those are just as important. Just kind of focusing on the macronutrient side, of course, today. But yes, I love this. I usually give this as a handout. There's plates that you can get, getting divided plates can be really helpful to kind of reinforce this plate method approach. You don't have to necessarily get a plate that's got, all these pretty little pictures on it, but you certainly can. But just, kind of understanding when you look at your plate, where's my protein, where's my fat, where's my fiber. I love for people to kind of have that in their thoughts as they're thinking about putting food on their plate. Okay. All right, so let's touch on this for a second, because this is where it gets really tricky. And I purposefully did not go down that rabbit hole today of talking about all the different ways we can balance these macronutrients depending on what dietary modification we choose. But what path do we take, right? So we know we need a variety of nutrients in our diet. We also know there's a lot of ways of doing this, almost too complicated, in my opinion. Bottom line, it's best advised by a registered dietitian, and your doctor certainly can help guide you in a direction health-wise as far as what maybe you need, because it really does depend on personal health goals. Someone that, has diabetes might be a little bit more in tune with how to better balance their blood sugars and what that might look for them than someone who's a professional athlete that's really trying to maximize performance. Okay, so it does depend. But some common dietary patterns that I know you guys have heard, and there's more. There's no way I could have put every dietary pattern on here, but just some common ones are, of course, the standard Western, which is kind of what I was referencing with my basic recommendations. But of course, we have low carb, we have keto, right? And so your carb percentage is going to look totally different than that 40 to 65%. It might be much lower than that. The Mediterranean diet might have a slightly different twist on healthy fats. Plant-based is typically a little bit higher in carb. However, it's very high in fiber. And then you've got something like paleo. So I feel like in general, what path is right? Well, it really just depends. And I think that's a conversation that is best had, like I said, with a medical team, with a healthcare professional versus a Google search, right? Like, what's best for me? How is the internet going to know? You need to talk that out with someone that can help give you a lot of unbiased facts. I think that's really important too. A lot of internet searches are pretty biased. I think it's good to have unbiased information that comes to this kind of stuff. How do we figure out all of this though, right? So maybe you're wondering, well, how do we know how many grams we're supposed to have? And how do we know how many calories we're supposed to have? Because it really starts there. In office, we figure out how many calories you need based on a just very general equation. And it takes into account your age, your gender, your activity level, any underlying health conditions. There's lots of things that go into the mix. We determine calories, and from that, we can determine a percentage of those calories that we feel, based on our conversation with you and your health goals, what would be a good starting point for you. There's meal plans that can help shed light on how to balance this out throughout the day. We've got lots of different methods as far as how to help with that, how to help you understand. So again, we're just really touching on we're dipping a toe in today with some of this. There's a lot more to be said, but I think bottom line, it's important to have a variety of nutrients. Okay, that's the bottom line, a variety of nutrients in your day. I get this question a lot. Do I need to track my macros? Okay. Think relevance here. All right. So I have people think on this a lot. Why do you want to do this? What does this mean to you? What's the relevance behind this? Are you eventually going to resent doing any of this? Throw that phone out the window and then just say, forget it? We have to think about all of that. Historically, what's tracking looked like you before? I like to ask people that question a lot. Has it been helpful? Has it been frustrating? Maybe there are different twists of tracking that we can talk through. I think that can be really nice for people to know, oh, wow, tracking doesn't actually have to look like MyFitnessPal every single day, or weighing your food out, right? So it can look so many different ways. Some pros of tracking: accuracy. I say that loosely because as you get into cons, I throw out inaccuracy. So yes, there can be slightly more accurate estimations of what you're eating when you're looking, drawing your attention more to food labels. That's where I feel like it gets a little bit more educational, is you learn how to look at food labels, you learn how to read them. If we're just kind of electronically putting stuff in all day long, I don't know, sometimes that's not always accurate, but it does bring about some accountability, which is on the pros. I get that. Some people think that this really does help them think about the food a little bit more. Flexibility, I'll explain why I put that on there. So flexibility, because when it comes to the macro side of things, if we're thinking macronutrient when we track, is that it can provide some flexibility in those food choices. Maybe we do look at food a little bit more neutral. We look at pizza as a carb and some fat instead of this is bad. We look at it as maybe we can have it. We just need to kind of fit it on our plate within this macronutrient balanced setting. And I like that. I do. But I also think you can get that mentality without tracking. I think that's why I like plate method for people, because it really puts in this just, okay, all foods can fit here. I need a variety. I need a balance of them on my plate. Now, some of the cons: time consuming. I get that. People will tell me, I just don't have time for this. And I get that. I do. I've done tracking electronically and written. I certainly have a preference between the two. I like for people to understand that, like I said, you have options. It can be micromanaging. It can be restrictive. If you have any history of disordered eating or any thoughts that appear disordered around food, I would not want you to track. I think that that's very unhelpful in the grand scheme of things. And so that's something that I would like to throw out there. I feel it's just not sustainable for everyone. And so I have a picture here of this Hello New Me food journal. I've recommended this to people in the past, and I like it. I think connecting with the journaling on a deeper level than just, numbers all of the time. And so, yeah, maybe it isn't as accurate as looking at, all of the data in an electronic tracker, but I think that you're pulling a bit more connection to the process, potentially thinking through habits a little bit. It gets into a little bit more detail that you can't get into when you're doing electronic tracking, more around behaviors. And so anyway, just wanted to talk through the tracking side of things a little bit, because that is a very popular question that I get a lot in our visits. I wanted to just put this on here, super simple. And I've also attached, or you guys should be getting some convenience meals. This is what a lot of our handouts look like. So we're very visual based with our handouts, because I think that's really easy for people to, when you see it, it makes sense. And if you're just looking at a bunch of words on a meal plan, we like to have a variety of things kind of floating around. But, when we see, these kind of go from left to right, like row by row, but and the beauty is you can learn how to put lots of different things together. But taking something like a rotisserie chicken, which would be your protein, Then you would have your carbohydrate coming from a complex carb like sweet potato. Then you could add in some fiber coming from those green beans. And then you would have some type of drizzle of healthy oil over those green beans. Or if you like to roast your sweet potato, I love to do that in a little bit of avocado oil. You could have some fresh slices of avocado on top of your rotisserie chicken, put some salsa on top, use some guac. Anyway, that's just how simple it can be. It does not have to be this complex situation where you're, feeling like it's difficult to put all of this together. All right. I've also put down on the middle row here. This is one of my favorite pizzas. I love this pizza crust, this Milton's, and they have it at Costco. So I highly recommend getting it there, clearly because it's going to be less expensive, right? But it's really tasty. My whole family loves it, even my kids. So I always feel like that's a win. And pizza, let's talk what pizza would be. Pizza would be, I would think, a carb serving. We could help figure out, portion sizes of things for you guys too, but just in general, pizza, a salad, some extra protein, because sometimes pizza doesn't provide a lot of protein. It can provide some if you have maybe a little bit of protein on your pizza from some type of meat. But I know, the cheese, but I mean, I know still having a bit more protein involved. So I say add that onto a salad. So some beans, some egg, whatever you want to do to kind of throw in extra protein, and then some type of healthy salad dressing to go in the mix. And then I've also put a quesadilla down here. This would be more of your not vegan, but more vegetarian option, using beans and some cheese and some whole grain with a little bit of veggies, maybe spinach, maybe something different. But just to kind of show you some really easy ideas. And I'm going to, of course, show you a couple more here in just a second. And then snacks, because snack time is really important that we're balancing these macronutrients out too. So that's probably an area that I focus on a lot with, because I don't think that we think through snack choices like we might a meal. And I really think that's important. So this top one could be part of a breakfast too, but I know it seems kind of an unconventional snack, having waffle, how, rebellious of you, but it's a good one. I love these power waffles. They have a little extra protein, have a waffle with a spread of peanut butter for some of that fat, and then mashing some of those raspberries or strawberries or blueberries. I love the berries mashed on top. It's really good. And I feel like it's kind of hits that little sweet spot in the afternoon if you're available to make something like this. There's easier options, but if you want something kind of fun and different, that's something that I've recommended before. I love tuna for a snack. I'm making tuna today, and this tuna is awesome. So I highly recommend it for, I'm going to show you how to put it as part of your meal, but I definitely recommend it as a snack. Lots of protein in tuna. I love the wholly guacamoles. I'm going to show you another option for avocado. I love mixing the tuna with the wholly guacamole. You could also do it a different way. You can make your tuna however you like to make tuna, and then you could use your wholly guacamole with some carrots and crackers as kind of a dip. It's a built-up snack, but I'm also really like that for some people. So again, portion sizes are individualized. These are just examples of good food choices. And then the last one, very standard, very typical, but easy: cheese and some almonds and some type of fruit. So we've got our protein, our fat, and we've got our fiber and our carb. So that's kind of how I've lined it up, if you can't tell. So far left, protein; middle, fat; far right, carb. Okay. All right, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you two different recipes today. I'm going to do a creamy chicken tortilla soup, and I'm showing you a couple different ways of how to use this recipe. And then I'm going to make a really fun tuna salad. And this is just a nice little twist that you can individualize and kind of, ad lib to something like a tuna salad, but I think this is kind of a fun one. Okay. All right, guys. So I am going to first start with the tortilla soup, okay? Let me get my thoughts together here. Okay, so I am gonna raise my computer up here for a second because I have my crock pot, or it's my Instapot, but I'm gonna use it as a crock pot. And I want you to be able to see over top of it. So give me 1 second. To do it readjust. Do I have any questions as I'm getting set up?
Yes. We have one person asking about tofu types and how varieties of firmness also show variances in protein to carb ratio. Are you familiar with any of that?
I I'm not gonna just sit here and say I know exactly the different ratios of all the firmness of the of the tofu. I'm interested to see how variable. Yeah, but I love tofu as a protein option for, of course, a plant-based source of protein. Was there a concern over just too much carb, too much protein there, or?
I'm not sure. We did have
Okay.
another question. Are omega-6 fatty acids good for you?
Okay, good question. So it's about a balance with those. You do want a higher ratio of those omega-3s, but yeah, so I mean that's something that I think can be individualized for someone, but yes, I really do kind of focus a lot on the higher omega-3 ratio. So getting like the salmon, the flax seeds, the walnuts, these really good omega-3 foods kind of in the mix. Anything else? Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna get my Instapot set up here. So so I don't know if anyone has an Instapot, but I am going to turn it on to a little bit. Where we go? There we go. All right, so I am going to turn it on to slow cook, and it's for 2 hours, so it goes really quickly, which I think is great. So this is a super quick, super fast recipe just in general. You could, of course, make it since it's only 2 hours, you obviously could do it right before dinner, depending on when you're at home, when you get home, or you can, make it ahead of time, like on a Sunday afternoon, and have it ready to go for that Monday. All right, but there's not that many ingredients, which is also really nice. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of talk you through the ingredients that I'm using. So I'm going to add, let's see, this is 32 ounces, or just a whole box here of chicken broth. Okay, so this is low sodium chicken broth. So I'm just going to dump everything in, right? So it's that crock pot ease, which is really nice. There's a couple modifications to this recipe that I'll talk you through also. Okay, so we've got our low sodium chicken broth. We've got a can of fire roasted diced tomatoes, not drained. So I would leave the juice in and just add all of it into your crock pot here. It's asking for the tri-bean blend. So you can do whatever beans you want. There's no reason why you have to do the tri-bean blend here. This is a mix of kidney and pinto and black. If you just like black beans, add black beans. But they just kind of adding in a bit of a mixture here for just something kind of different. So just 1 can of those. I've already drained these. So add those in just after you've drained them. Okay, this is the part that I found I wanted modified. You can do whatever you would like to do with this. All right. So it's asking for a can of light coconut milk. I personally, I love coconut flavor, but I thought it was a little too much for this recipe. So I'm just going to do half of a can. And again, you can do whatever you want here, but that's just something that I'm going to do. So adding in just a little bit like half, okay? It's a little yucky. And then the other ingredient, which I thought was kind of fun, which is something that sometimes you can do if you want to add more fiber, vitamin A. It's really kind of a neutral flavor, so you don't really taste it. But it adds a lot of fiber to the recipe. A half a can of pumpkin. Okay, you can do this with chili. So if you've never tried that, I don't know if anyone's tried that before. So I'm just going to scoop in about half of a can. Okay. Can add the rest to maybe a smoothie or something like that. Okay. Then we are going to add in your chicken. And so I've got 2 cups. This was the part that was really simple, is I just did rotisserie chicken. Okay. So I have 2 cups, maybe a little bit more of rotisserie chicken. I'm going to add that in. Okay.
Katie, where the recipe says rinsed beans, do we need to rinse them?
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I got a low sodium. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. I usually just do that with all my beans. I put them in my, strainer and I just rinse them, drain them, and then yeah, toss them back in. So
Okay.
mhm. This was my other modification, and if it helps, I can email out these modifications. But I reduced the coconut milk to half of a can. And then I wanted the flavor of cumin and chili powder. I usually like that in something like this, and it didn't really have any seasonings. And so that's not adding really any salt, anything like that, but it's just adding a little bit of flavor. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more, like a heaping teaspoon of cumin. And the same with the chili powder. Just okay, that is it. It is super simple, super quick. I'm going to stir it up here. And you just leave it. You leave it for a couple of hours just to let those flavors blend. And I'm going to show you, of course, the finished product, as this is going to be here a while. Okay, so let me show you guys what I've got here. This is it in kind of a soup fashion. Okay, so we've got our mixture, which you can see kind of, the chicken, the beans, the stewed tomatoes. I've drizzled just a little bit of cheese on top. Something else we can do to kind of jazz it up is add a little bit of plain Greek yogurt. So I'm just going to take a little dollop and kind of, put it right there on the top. Something else that I'm going to do is take a little bit of cilantro, just like a little pinch. I mean, it really just depends. A lot of this is kind of what you like, added to it to taste. And then the other thing that I love on a recipe here, break this up a little bit and sprinkle in some green onions. So we've got green onions, we've got a little sprinkle of cilantro, and we've got a dollop of the sour cream substitute, so Greek yogurt. And we've got just a tiny little sprinkle of cheese. There's really not a whole lot on there, but enough to give you a little bit of flavor. And so this would be more of a soup. Okay, so this would be your soup setting. But something that I like to do with it, I feel like you can eat this a few different ways. Okay, so this is my personal favorite when I made it, was to put it, and I did drain it a little bit so I didn't have as much soup, but put it on top of some cauliflower rice. Okay. And the other thing you could do, which I didn't do, of course, is sprinkle some tortillas on top, which I did do here. So I've got the same stuff that I topped the soup with, but I did it on top of cauliflower rice. So I've got a bed of cauliflower rice. I've got my chicken mixture with my beans. And then I've got my dollop of my Greek yogurt. And then I've got the cilantro, the green onion, and then just kind of crushed up some chips on top. This is really tasty. And so kind of to break down all of the different macronutrients here. So we've got, you could probably add a little bit more carb to this. If you needed more carb based on your needs, I would do rice. Okay, I did cauliflower rice. So that might be better for someone who is, sorry, I'm going to adjust this because I know sometimes you have a hard time hearing me. I would, if you were doing something a bit more low carb, then cauliflower rice could be a nice alternative for you. And then of course you're going to have a little bit of carb from the tortilla, from the chips. You could also use a tortilla. That was going to be my next step, is that you could kind of put this mixture into a tortilla and kind of have it like that. And then you've got some healthy fat, which I was going to add and just didn't. So let me do that really quickly, from some avocado, which is the best way, in my opinion, to add fat to anything, is to just add a drizzle of olive oil or a little bit of avocado. That's one of my favorite things to do. So when you kind of look at it, you can see adding in those little avocado chunks is a great touch. And then a little bit of salsa if you want it on there. It's really tasty. It's delicious and such a quick recipe. So,
Katie, if you do not have an Instapot or a crock pot, can this easily be done on the stove as well?
Yeah, I really think it's just like this simplicity of leaving it for a little bit so you don't have to worry about it. I mean, keep checking on it, but it is not one of those things where it's actually cooking in it, so it doesn't need that. Yeah, I think everything is already cooked. I think you're really just blending some flavors.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the Greek yogurt, could you possibly substitute a plain coconut yogurt?
Sure.
So
Yeah, I think you can be flexible with that.
And would
Definitely.
it be a substitute for coconut milk?
I don't know if I would put it in. I don't know. I feel like the coconut milk was meant to add a little bit of liquid. So I think if you're not going to use the coconut milk, just leave the coconut milk out and then just use it as a substitute, as maybe a topping to go on to your recipe. But you could also, that might add, as I'm thinking about it, that might add a bit of some creaminess texture if mixed in. So I say go for it. I love trying things out. What you might do is kind of do it single serve. So, make it without coconut milk, then mix in your yogurt into it and see how that kind of feels and tastes. And so yeah, I think that could be a really good option.
Okay, and the beautiful plate that you just showed us,
Yes.
was that all one serving? Would that be one serving?
Yeah, that depends, right? So that's where it's kind of more individualized. So that was a serving for myself and somebody. But depending on your needs and what you're kind of looking for, you might want to add, like I said, add a little bit more, a half a cup more of rice. You might want, so that's where it would be more individualized to kind of help someone figure out exactly what a serving would look like for them. For this particular recipe, it made 6 servings. And that is something that I'm sorry, I didn't even get the exact, like what a sixth of, I know what the macronutrients would be for a sixth of this, and the recipe does tell you, but it doesn't tell you, which is a frustrating part of a recipe. I wish that they would give like a cup and a half is a sixth, right? And it did not do that. So, anyway, yes. I can, I would, if I had to guess, because, just been doing this for a while, based on the amount of what it made, I would say probably around that cup and a half would be a good estimate of what the recipe's serving size is. But again, the individual nature of kind of figuring out portions is something that is kind of helpful on a one-on-one basis with someone.
Okay. And will this recipe freeze well, even with the coconut milk in it?
Yes, because
Okay.
I did do that. I have frozen it. And it was perfectly fine.
I am sure.
Okay, I'm gonna pivot over to the other side of my counter here, and I'm gonna work on the tuna salad, which is really quick. I am going to regroup here just for a second. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. So all right. Okay. I'm going to move on to the tuna salad. It's so weird because I'm really used to being on that side. And I mean, I'm just moving over to the other side here, but it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. All right. So this recipe is just as fast, just as simple as that one. We are going to do a spicy tuna salad. And the best thing about this is that you can individualize all of it, how spicy it is. If you don't like a lot of the celery or whatever's in it, you can take that down a notch if you need to. Okay. So we're going to start with our tuna. Right? And I have a bowl that I'm putting in. Now, this, what I'm making is a single serving of this tuna. Okay.
Katie, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Sorry. I hate that it's like that. I don't remember that being an issue, but I apologize for that. So this is a single serving of the tuna salad. However, it's a single serving based off this recipe, right? So again, individualized servings and things like that we talk with people about based off your calorie needs. You're probably going to need, this would be, in my opinion, a snack for someone. The way I'm going to put it together with all the other foods I have on a plate over here is going to make it more of a meal. All right, so you're going to take 1/3 cup of tuna. So I'm going to I have a big can of tuna that I put into this, little Tupperware, and I'm going to put it into my bowl. Okay, so I've got just 1/3 cup of it. Let me bring my yogurt. This uses a Greek yogurt as well. I am going to put about 1/4 cup of celery. Now, some people might not like celery, and you can omit that, right? Or you can put less. You can definitely do less celery. I'm going to show you how I cut my celery. So I like to just kind of cut it in thin strips so that it's nice and fine and really, small chunks. Okay, kind of put it in a little line there, and then just cut it up. Okay, so 1/4 cup would be probably a little, this might not be a full 1/4 cup here, but this for me is a decent amount of celery within this. And so kind of just individualize kind of how you like it, I would say. But sorry. Yeah, so just individualize it how you like it, but I put a roughly, a little less than a quarter cup of celery there. I have some red cabbage, which I think is kind of a nice fun twist because it brings about a lot of color. So I think that's always kind of nice. Okay, so I'm going to drop it down and show you how I cut it. I've just kind of the same with the celery. I've cut it in, cut like a little hunk off of the cabbage, and then I've cut it into, thin little strips. And then I'm just going to make kind of smaller cuts from that. So, all right. Okay, so far we have a third a cup of celery. A third a cup of tuna, a little less than a quarter cup of celery, and about a quarter cup of red cabbage. Next, I'm going to add a tablespoon of plain Greek yogurt, just a single serve of this I bought. I'm going to add a tablespoon of Greek yogurt to that, and then I'm going to add about a half a tablespoon of sriracha, which I'm just now realizing I forgot. I'm going to get that real fast. Any questions while I'm here? Because I know we're kind of 5 minutes out.
Not any major ones quite yet.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to take kind of a heaping tablespoon of Greek yogurt and put in here, and then I'll show you guys how I'm mixing it up.
We do have one about the red cabbage size.
Mm-hmm.
What she didn't hear what size red cabbage to do.
I don't know that I got, so you don't need a lot of red cabbage. So
Okay.
I would probably, use it for other, I love cutting up red cabbage and sprinkling it into salads. So you could do that or slaw. Or if you wanted to make this tuna for, a few times, you would have some left over. But I just got the smallest little head of red cabbage that I could get.
Okay.
But you cut it into, I just cut like, a little chunk off of it and then cut it in little strips. And then I proceeded to cut it into more finer pieces to go into it. So the sriracha part, let's talk about that because I don't love a lot of heat, but I love a little bit. So a tablespoon is what the recipe called for. And I thought it was pretty spicy. Some people might not think that's spicy at all. So that needs to probably be individualized. For me, I needed a half a tablespoon. So I'm cutting it down to a half of a tablespoon. I'm going to show you guys me mixing it up here. So again, I've got some tuna. I've got a little bit of Greek yogurt. I've got what else? I've got my celery, my red cabbage, and then my sriracha. And we're just gonna kind of mix this up. And I think, guys, I'm gonna add. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna add a tablespoon more of the Greek yogurt because it was 2 tablespoons. So I'm gonna mix that up and then I will show it to you.
And these are all heart healthy as well, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
did
put a little bit of cheese on the, but again, we can have some saturated fat, even if we're on a heart healthy diet. It's not that you can't have 0. It's about keeping it to a certain percentage, which again, that's something that we chat through in sessions, but yeah. And then there was, which I forgot to add, so I'm going to add it right now, is a 1/4 teaspoon of everything bagel seasoning, which I got from Trader Joe's. This is unnecessary. It was kind of a fun little twist. And I was like, I think you want to do that. You do not need to do that. So if you don't have everything bagel seasoning lying around, not a big deal. All right. So that's kind of what it looks like mixed up. I'm going to put it on my plate here and show you guys a nice macronutrient-based lunch, which is probably what I'm going to be eating. Okay. This entire serving size is, let me double check all of this. Stuff here. I don't know why I don't have that on my little thing. It was really good though. It's like 150 calories, 20 grams of protein. It was a really solid snack by itself. But this, I'm going to show you guys. This is one of my favorite kind of lunch styles. Okay. So I'm going to talk you through the tuna, some crackers, which I've used the Simply Mills. Sorry, and I'm not, can you hear me okay, Carol?
Yes.
Okay. I have these Simply Mills almond flour crackers. So for those that are gluten-free, that's really great. I've also got some hummus. I've got some guacamole little chunks, which I like. These are just avocado. Okay, so this you can get now without just wholly guac. You can get diced avocado. I love that. It's literally just avocado. Little bit of lightly salted cashews, some fiber from my veggies, a little bit of hummus, which is also going to provide carb. This is a really easy, great macronutrients balanced lunch option for people. So I kind of talk through that a lot with people, doing like almost adult Lunchable kind of stuff, like healthy Lunchables, where you've got your protein, but some crackers, maybe some nuts and seeds, some dip and veggies. It's really easy. So I know sorry.
When you're picking out your canned tuna, is albacore tuna better than other canned tuna?
I just go off taste there. I don't get really nitpicky with my recommendations on the tuna. I just tell people to look for it on, lower sodium mixed in water, not oil, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So this was not albacore, and they both have good sources of omega-3 fats. And so I do think that that's perfectly fine. If you're pregnant, I usually recommend there's the Safe Catch, which has a little lower mercury. I mean, just reducing the amount that you eat of tuna in general during that phase of life. But other than that, it's the specific type. I don't tell people one or the other there.
And where did you get the crackers? I've actually seen them at Harris Teeter, but also the diced avocado cups.
Yeah, so the crackers, as you can see, these look like Costco. I have to get them there because they are expensive. It's ridiculously less expensive if you can get them from Costco. They're so good. I'm not gluten-free, but I just really like them. And they have a good flavor, and I do like the ingredients of them. Very kind of, you can see like 6 different ingredients. I mean, it's really a good clean cracker. I like it. The diced avocado you get over where the holy guacamole is, where the refrigerated, dips and stuff are kind of near produce. This is new. I've not seen this a whole lot, and I really like it because sometimes I don't need a guacamole. I just want an easy avocado option, especially if avocados aren't ripe or they're too ripe. This is great, and it kind of comes in this long container of it, and then you cut it into quarters for a serving. And so you base it off of that, or at least that's what I've done. And the serving that was on my plate was about a quarter of the package. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, this has been so educational, and we have enjoyed the cooking demo as well.
Perfect.
You've got lots of great comments in the question and answer about how useful these webinars are. So we have really enjoyed them. And we are looking forward to May 14th.
Yes, definitely. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of April, and I look forward to seeing everyone in May.
Okay. And
right.
Everyone will be receiving a copy of today's presentation, as well as the recipes and any handouts. And they do want your substitution ideas.
I'm going to send the substitutions, and there was something else that I wanted to do also, so I'll send that over. I wanted to change because a lot of the recipes they put in grams, which is confusing because not everyone has a food scale or needs one. So I'll go ahead and convert that over for the recipes too and share that. So I'll get that over today.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And
you're very welcome.
Thank you to all of our participants who joined us today.
Yes, thank you so
Have a
much.
good
I'll see y'all
afternoon.
in May. Bye.